Hi, I'm Joe Alterman, the Executive Director of Neranenah. Thanks so much for tuning in to the third season of Neranenah Scholars. Our first two seasons focused on Jewish contributions to music, and as we delve a little deeper into the comedy world, this season will focus on Jewish comedy with the amazing comedian Judy Gold. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoy. As a child, what did it mean to know, like, as a child, that you were Jewish? Was it a good thing or a bad thing? Or
Well, I grew up in a Jewish Italian neighborhood. There
Mm.
were, I went to public school. I went to Hebrew school. Um, my mother loved being Jewish so much. She uh grew up in Manhattan, and every day after school, she would sit in the boys' Hebrew school class. Girls didn't go to Hebrew school, and she would sit there voluntarily. And then I guess when the boys became uh bar mitzvahs, they did a little special thing for her on Shavuos because her name was Ruth.
Mhm.
And but she loved, it was the center of our home,
Mm.
pretty much. We went to synagogue. We had Shabbat dinner every Friday night. We went to synagogue every week. She built a sukkah. I mean, it was our outside little awning over our barbecue area, but she would, decorate it. We were kosher.
Mm.
It was definitely the center of our life, and I think the center of my parents social lives too. They were very my father was the treasurer of the synagogue, my
Mm.
mother in the sisterhood, my father in the men's club, and my
Mm.
mother was part of Hadassah. But and even their friends growing up, all Jewish. And I was also taught that everyone hates us. So it was this um it was definitely a sense of pride, a sense of knowing that we're different, we're not like everyone else, and that everyone hates us. And they were right. So, I was always like, oh, you're crazy, you're overreacting. My father was born in 1916, so he was in England during World War II.
Mm.
He never spoke about it at all. Um, but I recently spoke to my sister who said he had nightmares, but he didn't
Mm.
talk about he was there during Blitzkrieg. And then, my mother was here in New York and grew up, with a lot of anti-Semitism.
Mm.
Even though you're on the Upper West Side, there were certain areas of Manhattan you didn't go to.
Mm.
Uh, Her father experienced anti-Semitism in his job. My aunt, I mean, if I really talked about it, my aunt is still alive, my mother's sister, talked about how things she wasn't chosen for.
Mm.
Um yeah, so it was a oh, and best of all, every time we watched television or went anywhere, it was like literally sitting there. Jew, someone would come on screen. Non-Jew, married a Jew, anti-Semitic, converted, every person. And I
Mhm.
do that. I still do that.
When I was living in New York, my dad would come visit, and he loves being Jewish, but he does,
Right,
we'd pass an Orthodox guy on the Williamsburg Bridge, and my dad was trying to be nice, and he'd always say shalom to
right,
everyone, and
right.
it was always dad, come on. But
Yeah, it's embarrassing, but
yeah.
I really appreciate it now.
For me, I grew up going to a Jewish school, and we said the prayers. I didn't really understand them too much, and the high holidays was kind of the time when we get a new suit. And to me, honestly, high holidays, my whole childhood, it was like a fashion show kind of thing. That's how
Right.
I
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
what I thought it
Yes.
was, and yeah, and then I'd go to synagogue and come home and put on my jazz records, and that's where I feel like I
Right.
had my real bar mitzvah later that afternoon,
Right.
if that makes sense. I don't know if you
Yeah,
can relate to that at
absolutely.
all. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You know, yeah, it's I feel like my parents were older, um, and they weren't into the fashion part of it. Like,
Mm.
and even for my siblings and myself, our bar and bat mitzvahs, there was no big party. We had dinner before for mine, which was like the biggest out of all. My sister, they had dessert afterwards. My brother, they had a brunch at the house. You know, their values were different. But I also agree. I would go to synagogue and Hebrew school, and it was like a chore. And I did love my bat mitzvah because it was a performance. But and I really did, you know, I kept Passover. I kept all the holidays. I fasted. I still do, but the meaning, it was just something we did. This is what you do. You're Jewish. But as you get older, you realize the connection to these, you know, to your ancestors, and the fact that, you know, people died just for absolutely no reason. You know, I kept a kosher home for a very long time with my kids. And now I cheat all the time, but you know, and people were like, "What is? Oh, you're crazy!" And it was, even though we're not going to services every morning and doing all this stuff, it's a reminder we're a little different. This is how we eat. This is, you know, but it's so funny how your relationship with Judaism changes as you get older, because I feel like, you know, my father died when I was 27, and we do death amazingly well, you know, and just the grieving process, and that, you know, I look at my friends who have, you know, family members die, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Nah, nothing. We might do a memorial in a couple of weeks. And this idea that you know exactly what is expected of you, and where you're supposed to be, and what you're supposed to do, and the time that you're given, and there's so much of it that makes sense. And then, so when my father died, I was doing stand-up, and I would go on the road, and I really wanted to say mourner's Kaddish. And so I'd go to these places, and I'd bring a skirt, and I would find a synagogue, a local synagogue, and go in on Saturday morning and say Kaddish. And as I traveled the country and I sat in those synagogues, I thought, you know, these people have no idea who I am, that I'm, you know, going to be on stage telling jokes in a few hours, you know. But you're all singing the same songs as me. I know exactly what's in your refrigerator at home. You know, it gave me a sense of community, and how, you know, we are everywhere. And we're one. We're different. We are different. But it was that, and then as I get older, the tikkun olam, the healing of the world, the fighting for, you know, I'm gay, so I'm fighting for, you know, equal rights, just the social justice part of it. There's so much you can say about, but there's so much more you can say, you know, that's something I can sign on to. And as I get older, different things become more, you know, significant to me about the religion, about our customs and our traditions. And once you have kids, you know, you want to pass that on. This is how we do this holiday. And remembering at the holidays, well, my grandmother did this, and, you know, it's just a connection. It's a connection to a larger group of people.
Oh yeah, you know, speaking of getting older with Judaism and the power of music, do you know who Ben Sidran is by chance?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Do you know Ben Sidran by chance?
Ben Sidran.
He's a great musician. He's kind of like my hero mentor in this Jewish world, whatever, the Jewish music-ish world. And we relate on a lot of things. And he's 79 now, and he had a similar thing. He had his bar mitzvah, And then he went home and put on some Miles Davis records, and he felt like that was his bar mitzvah. But he said he didn't really connect with things until he went to his son's bar mitzvah. And basically, it wasn't the words that got him, but it was the melodies that they were singing at his son's bar mitzvah. It just made him feel like he got the chills. He felt like he was standing next to his grandpa, who he hadn't seen
Right.
since he was a kid. It's just so
Right.
powerful how it changes.
Right. That,
over.
yeah, that generation. I remember my older son getting bar mitzvahed, and we're following him. He's carrying the Torah, and I'm right behind him. And I was like sobbing. I couldn't, like, it was so emotional passing this on, you know, and you think about our history and that we're still doing it.
Yeah.
You know, we're still here.
It's pretty
and
incredible.
those songs, you know, I went to Sweden a few years ago for a Jewish arts thing. And on I wanted to go to the synagogue, and we got to the synagogue, and there was a lot of security, and we had to, you know, show identification and tell them why we wanted to come in. It was very not safe. And there weren't a lot of, the synagogue was beautiful, and there weren't a lot of people there, but there were people there from all over the world, and it was the same melody, and it was this, they were the same prayers, and you're just like, that these things have survived.
Yeah.
It's so weird because I go to B'nai Jeshurun. I'm a member there, and it's all music, and they've changed some of the melodies, and it's so, you know, you don't want to be like, oh, but there are certain melodies that I'm like, I don't really want to change that, even though, you know what I mean?
I get in arguments all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many synagogues down here want to bring in young people, and they think that changing the melody is going to do it. But to me, I feel like the melody is almost more important than the words in terms of connecting generations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm with you.
I think you're right. I think it is that melody, and you know, like they're like recipes, you know?
Yeah. It's funny, like exploring the background of them, you know, because when I started this job, we were called the Atlanta Jewish Music Festival. So what is Jewish music? It's a fun conversation to have. But I found out that so many of these prayers are not Jewish melodies. They're really German drinking songs put to, you know, so I told my dad, we went to Yom Kippur the next year, and every song he could hear people, you know, banging in a bar, and he's ruined services for me.
Drinking beer, drinking a keg.
But you know, like,
that's interesting, because then you think about the Torah, you know, and the way it's, you know, the melody's right there. It's notated there. For you. And you learn all of these mini melodies. Yeah.
It's fascinating because I love, you know, talking what is Jewish music with people. And a lot of times we get it's anything in a minor key. And there's a piece, a Beethoven piece that I love to play when I do these Jewish music concerts, because it sounds like a prayer. And I say, that sounds Jewish. Everyone says, oh, that's definitely Jewish. It's not. It's
what
Beethoven.
is it? Which piece is it?
I got it. It's from a piano sonata number 8. It's the second movement. Or no, it's the third movement.
Piano sonata number 8.
Third movement. Yeah.
Wait, I got to look it up.
Oh yeah. And I read it from a lead sheet, so I kind of overemphasize the minor 8. Jewish part. You'll know the second movement. It's the Pathetique.
I love that's the adagio part, which is so gorgeous. But yeah.
Yeah. But like, what made
it's amazing.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, check out number 3 when you have a chance. It's
okay.
It's fun. But you know, what made you? I know you majored in music. Like, what made you want to major in music? Or can you talk about?
You know, well, here's the thing. I've always been drawn to music, and my father's first cousin was a musician and a music teacher. I think I definitely get it from my father's side of the family. My father played violin. You know, we had a piano. And my brother had lessons. My sister had lessons. They didn't really get into it. And I was like, can I have lessons? And so I started taking lessons, and I loved it. And then, you know, in school, you could pick an instrument. My brother picked saxophone. My sister picked flute. And I wanted to play the French horn, but they didn't have any French horn. So I had to play clarinet. And my mother was always like, Benny Goodman, you know. And my father really did love music. And it was also, I don't know, there's something, I wasn't great at practicing. I was never, you know, I could practice and practice. I didn't have that natural, oh, let me hear that. Okay, I'm going to play it now, which I always wanted.
Yeah.
But there, it changes. Like if I listen, like I loved conducting class in college, you know, just listening, and I'm just fascinated by these noises, the tonal I mean, putting that all together, it's so incredible, and the skill, um and yeah, I remember you know, like stupid parts of songs. Like I would remember, you know, you'd listen to a pop song and I would remember some, you know, random, you know, melody going on, especially like in Burt Bacharach. I always loved that he sort of had this counter melody going.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, I would get so excited, like, no, listen to this part. And so when I was in college and I played in high school or in the orchestra, I kept piano lessons. I played in the marching band. And then when I got to college, I was going to be a communications major. And I was like, the only thing I really want to learn about is music. Like I love music. I want to learn. And my father, of course, thought I was going to be a music teacher. My mother wanted to be a music teacher. And I, you know, I wasn't like the other kids. I wasn't in the practice room for 8 hours a day. I wasn't only hanging around with music students. And I was, someone dared me to do stand up my sophomore year in December. And that was it. But I did go on to, I loved music history. It was one of the only things. I have ADD, really bad ADHD, and it was the only thing I could focus on. I could sit at the piano for a long time. I could sit and practice my clarinet for a long time. I could sit and listen to music. Like it was the one thing that held my attention for long periods of time.
Was it, you know, like comparing your relationship to music and comedy, like was one of them like an emotional, like a way to get your emotions or your feelings out, or were they both, or was one your love and one's your job? Like, I mean,
you know, music is, that's such a good question, Joe, because, you know, music to me, people, you know, I just did this show at the Comedy Cellar. It's called the Comedy Jam, and you do a few minutes and then you sing a song. And I said I wanted to sing something Carole King. I love Carole King. So I was like, I'll do You've Got a Friend. So the guy is really young and he's like, no one's gonna know that song. I said, everyone knows You've Got a Friend. Sorry about they're coming to pick me up. Everyone knows You've Got a Friend. No, they don't. And of course everyone knows it, no matter how old you are.
Yeah. And
so he said, I don't know if we can get a piano player. You might have to do the James Taylor version. And I said, well, I'll accompany myself. And they were like, you will? And it's just, I don't share that part of me. It's sort of like, it is my emotional, it is those, it's vulnerability. It's emotions. You know, when I see musicians like yourself, performing, especially jazz, because it's such an extension of, it's not, jazz is so much like comedy, and it's an extension of yourself. It's where you go into the zone and you go where it takes you, you know. And you see the contortions in musicians' faces. You see their bodies react, and that it, you know, and it's, they are vulnerable, you know, especially jazz musicians. And so, and it's risky, and stand up
Mhm.
is risky.
Mhm.
You know, when you go off on a riff, you know intellectually, all right, well, this is going to eventually end and we're all going to be together again. But while
Mhm.
you're on that riff, you don't know where you're going, right? Is
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
you know
Oh,
what I mean?
totally. But like I
But
have tricks. Like
yeah.
if I make a mistake, I can make the mistake again and people don't think it's a mistake. But I don't know if can you do the same thing with comedy? Like
You know, you can't, it's hard to recover, but um yeah, yeah, you can't. You make a mistake, you know, because one
Yeah.
syllable will screw up a joke. It's all timing.
Right,
Like
right.
people don't realize that the timing,
Mm.
and you know, comedy and music, timing. Um, you know, and even if you go, the way Jews talk
Mm.
is funny.
Mhm.
You know, like you can just laugh at the cadence, you
Mhm.
know, of the way we you know have a question. There's always some sort of up, you know, like um yeah, it's really, and it's so funny when you say the minor, because it is, you know, you think about there's no major what major Jewish songs are there in
Yeah.
a C major or a G major or an A major, you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Well, it's really interesting because
Um
I talked to like over probably 300 people about what's the Jewish music conversation. And a lot of people would say it was the minor part, but a lot of the like more musical scholarly people actually said the Jewish part of music is that it's a major minor shift. Like a song like Summertime is very Jewish
right,
to people because it starts minor and ends major. They thought that's the
right,
Jewish part.
right,
Uh,
right, right.
it's a
It
hard
is,
thing to
I mean, it is
define.
a bit of mixed emotions, and it depends. I think it depends on what kind of Jew you are.
Yeah.
You know, you have these. You read that you go on social media and you read these stories. This, you know, especially Holocaust survivors. They survived the Holocaust. They created this. They believe in love. You know, the people who have been through the worst and yet see the
Mm,
best in people.
yeah,
I think that's the minor major shift. You know,
definitely.
because the Jews all start out minor because everyone hates. Like, we start out
Yeah.
with a, you know what? People don't
I-
like us.
yeah, I met a guy who's doing his a thesis on this topic, and he calls it "From Oi to Joy." I think it's perfect.
Oh, I love that.
It's perfect.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Great programming like this is only possible because of supporters like you. So if you're interested in supporting Neranenah, please visit us online at neranenahArts.org. Thanks so much.